It all started when my daughter, Sarah, screamed into the phone, her voice trembling, desperate, and full of fear. "Dad, you have to come now. You won't believe what I found." The panic in her voice sent a chill through me, and my heart instantly skipped a beat. I had been in the garage, tinkering with the lawnmower, thinking it was just another boring Saturday afternoon. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to unfold. I rushed back into the house, not knowing what to expect. My mind raced with possibilities. Was something wrong with Sarah? Had something happened to Amanda? My stomach twisted in knots as I entered the living room, where Sarah was standing frozen in front of the TV, her face pale, eyes wide with a mix of disbelief and horror. I followed her gaze, and my breath caught in my throat. On the screen, there was a photo of my wife, Amanda, smiling and laughing with another man. But it wasn't just any man. No, this was a man I knew all too well. Brad Miller. I had shaken his hand not long ago, laughed with him over beers at a bar, and thought nothing more of it. But now, here he was, my wife's secret, standing there like a slap to the face. The photo was innocent enough on the surface. Amanda and Brad were at some party, looking like two people who had known each other for years. But as I stared at the screen, a cold wave of realization crashed over me. This wasn't just a friendship, not even close. The way they looked at each other, the familiarity, it was too intimate, too comfortable. The betrayal was so clear in my mind that I could almost feel the weight of it in my chest. How long had this been going on? How many times had I been blind to the truth? But it wasn't just a photo. The more I looked at it, the more details seemed to emerge. In the background, there was a hint of something else, another photo. A folder, labeled with a name I didn't recognize. Private. Sarah must have found it by accident while trying to grab her homework from my wife's desk. She had stumbled across something she was never supposed to see. I could feel the blood draining from my face as the realization set in. I could see it in Sarah's eyes. She knew what it meant, too. This wasn't just a mistake or a momentary lapse. This was a secret Amanda had been hiding, one that had been building for who knows how long. I couldn't believe it. My wife, the woman I had trusted, the mother of my child, had been living a double life. I didn't know whether to be angry or devastated, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't let this slide. Not now, not ever. "Sarah," I said, my voice tight and unsteady, "go upstairs. Don't come down until I tell you it's okay." She nodded, almost in a daze, still staring at the screen, as if she couldn't quite process what she'd just found. As she turned and walked away, I grabbed my phone, hands trembling, ready to call Amanda. But something stopped me. I couldn't just ask her about this over the phone. I needed answers, real answers. I needed to see her face when I confronted her. The seconds stretched into minutes as I paced back and forth in the living room, my mind spinning with questions. How long had this affair been going on? Was it only with Brad, or were there others? And most of all, how could I have been so blind to it all? I grabbed a drink of water, tried to calm my nerves, but it didn't help. The anger was building up inside me like a ticking time bomb. I couldn't believe I had been married to someone who had been lying to my face for who knows how long. Someone who had been betraying me, sneaking around behind my back, and acting like everything was fine. I wanted to scream, to throw something, but instead, I just sat there, trying to control my breathing. That's when I heard it, the sound of the front door opening. Amanda had just returned home. I stood up, my heart pounding in my chest, and made my way upstairs. The bedroom door was wide open, and Amanda was standing in front of her vanity, brushing her hair like nothing was wrong. She hadn't even noticed I was standing there, watching her. For a moment, I just stood there, my mind racing. Should I confront her now? Should I wait for the right moment? No, there was no right moment. There was only the truth, and I needed to hear it. "Amanda," I said, my voice steady but cold, "we need to talk." She turned around, her eyes lighting up with that fake, practiced smile of hers. "Hey, baby, how's your day going?" she asked, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Who's Brad?" I asked, cutting straight to the point. Her smile faltered for a split second, and I could see the panic in her eyes. What are you talking about?" she stammered, clearly caught off guard. But I wasn't buying it. "Don't lie to me, Amanda," I said, holding up the crumpled note I had found earlier, the one with the lipstick kiss. I know about Brad. I saw the picture. I saw everything. Her eyes flickered to the paper in my hand, and her face went pale. She opened her mouth to speak, but closed it again. Explain it to me, I demanded, my voice shaking with anger and hurt. What the hell is going on? How long have you been lying to me? But before she could answer, she did the one thing I didn't expect. She shrugged it off like it didn't matter. Oh, Daniel, it's not what you think, she said, waving her hand dismissively. You're making this into something it's not. You're overreacting. I couldn't believe it. She was still trying to deny it, to brush it all off like it was nothing. The woman I'd spent years with, the woman I had trusted, was standing there, looking me in the eye and lying to my face. And that was when I realized just how deep the betrayal went. It wasn't just Brad. It was everything. The lies, the secrets, the twisted version of reality she had built around me. My heart pounded in my chest, and all I could think was, I needed answers. I needed to know the truth. The seconds felt like hours. I stood there, holding the crumpled note in my hand, waiting for Amanda to say something, anything that would make sense of this mess. But instead, she just stood there, her face a perfect mask of confusion mixed with annoyance, like I was the one who had done something wrong. She had no idea what was coming. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. There was no room for weakness here. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me, not this time. I wasn't going to let her twist the story into something it wasn't. This wasn't some silly misunderstanding. This was a betrayal, plain and simple. Don't try to lie your way out of this, Amanda, I said, my voice low but firm. I saw the picture. I know about Brad. I know about the notes you've been exchanging. What the hell is going on? She looked at me like I was a stranger. It was as if she couldn't even recognize me anymore. The woman I had loved, the woman I had built a life with, she was gone, replaced by someone I didn't even know, someone who could stand there and lie so easily, so effortlessly. It's not like you think, Daniel, she said, her voice rising slightly. You're making a big deal out of nothing. I don't even know why you're so upset. I felt the blood rush to my head, my vision narrowing as anger began to boil inside me. A big deal. I almost couldn't believe my ears. You've been having an affair with my friend, and you think it's not a big deal? Amanda didn't seem to understand the gravity of what she was saying. She looked at me with that smug little smile, the same one she had when she thought she could talk her way out of anything. It's not an affair, Daniel. It's just something I needed, okay? I've been feeling so neglected. You haven't been there for me. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Neglected? She was talking about neglecting her own vows, her commitment to me and our family. But it wasn't just a betrayal. It was the way she was justifying it. The way she was trying to make it my fault, as if I had done something wrong. Neglected? I repeated, incredulity in my voice. You've been cheating on me, and you think I'm the problem? You're unbelievable, Amanda. Her expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly regained her composure. I don't want to fight about this, Daniel, she said, her tone suddenly soft, almost patronizing. Let's just move past it. We've been through so much, and I don't want to ruin everything. Move past it. My mind was reeling. I was standing there, looking at the woman I had once trusted with everything, and all she could say was that she wanted to move past it like it was some trivial thing, as if she hadn't just shattered everything we had. You want to move past it? I said, my voice dangerously calm. You think you can just sweep this under the rug? You've been lying to me for God knows how long, and now you expect me to just forget about it? You've crossed the line, Amanda. This isn't something you can just apologize for and expect everything to be okay again. Her eyes narrowed, and she crossed her arms, a defensive posture that only confirmed how little she cared. You always act like you're the victim, she snapped. I'm not the only one at fault here, Daniel. You've been so distant. You don't even care about me anymore. All you do is work, and you never pay attention to me. Maybe if you had treated me better, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere. I felt my blood boiling. There it was, the classic deflection. It's your fault card. She wasn't even apologizing for her actions, and instead, she was trying to make me feel guilty for her mistakes. You're unbelievable, I said, shaking my head. You think I'm the problem? You've been seeing Brad behind my back, and you're blaming me for your actions? You've completely lost it, Amanda. She let out an exasperated sigh, clearly tired of the conversation. You don't get it, do you? I'm just trying to make you understand. I never meant for any of this to happen, but it did. And now you're making it worse. You're making me feel worse. I couldn't take it anymore. The way she was spinning everything around, making herself the victim, was more than I could handle. I stepped forward, closing the distance between us. And for a moment, I just stood there, staring at her in disbelief. How had I not seen this coming? How had I let her get away with this for so long? You think you're the victim? I said, my voice growing louder now. You're the one who cheated on me, and now you're turning this around to make me feel bad? You've got some nerve, Amanda. You've crossed a line that we can't come back from. I could see it in her eyes now. The mask was starting to crack. For the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt, but it quickly vanished, replaced by frustration. I never wanted to hurt you, Daniel, she said, her voice shaky. But this is just the way it is. I can't change it. I don't know what you want from me. I was done. I couldn't listen to her anymore. The lies, the excuses, they were all too much. I had been betrayed, and no amount of her trying to manipulate the situation was going to fix it. You don't have to say anything more, I said, cutting her off. You've made your choice, Amanda, and now I have to make mine. I couldn't stay in that room a moment longer. The words Amanda had just said echoed in my mind, each one sharper than the last. I didn't know what I expected from her in that moment. Genuine regret, maybe? Apologies? Something that made me feel like she still cared, even just a little bit. But there was nothing but deflection, lies, and a level of coldness I hadn't seen before. I turned and walked out of the room, ignoring her calls for me to come back. My fists clenched at my sides, and every step I took toward the front door felt like an effort to stop myself from breaking something. I wanted to scream, to yell, but I knew it wouldn't change anything. Amanda had already made her decision, and all I could do now was figure out what the hell I was going to do next. I stepped into the living room, pacing back and forth. My mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. How could this happen? How did I miss all the signs? I was supposed to be the one who knew her better than anyone else, but somehow she had hidden this whole life from me. A life where I wasn't a part of it, where she was with another man, Brad. The thought made me sick. How long had they been doing this? How many times had I looked Brad in the eye, shaking his hand, all while knowing that behind my back, he was having her? How could you do this to me? I muttered to myself, pacing. I wanted to tear into Amanda, make her feel what I was feeling. But she wasn't worth it. She wasn't worth the time or the energy. Not anymore. I felt a surge of anger, but underneath it all was something else, something more painful. It was hurt deep in my chest. I had been deceived for so long, trusting her with everything, only to find out that I had been nothing more than a fool. I thought I knew who she was, but now I realized that the woman I had married, the mother of my child, was someone I didn't even recognize. Just then, I heard the sound of footsteps behind me. I turned to see Sarah standing in the doorway, her face pale, her eyes filled with worry. "Dad, what's going on?" she asked, her voice small, almost afraid to know the truth. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I didn't want to involve her in this mess. I didn't want her to see her mother like this. But I couldn't keep the truth from her. Not anymore. "Sarah," I began, my voice heavy with emotion. "Your mom, she's been seeing someone else. She's been lying to me. To us." Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked like she might collapse. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the confusion. She didn't deserve this. None of us did. This wasn't the kind of thing a child should ever have to face, but here we were. "How long?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I swallowed hard, not wanting to give her an answer. But the question hung in the air, demanding a response. "I don't know, sweetheart," I said, my voice cracking. "But it's been going on for a while. Longer than I'd like to admit." Sarah's face twisted in disbelief. She shook her head, as if trying to make sense of everything. "But why? Why would she do that? Didn't she love you?" The question hit me like a punch in the gut. Didn't she love me? I had asked myself that same question a million times in the last hour. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it didn't matter. Love didn't matter anymore. If she could do this, then love was just a word. A hollow word. "People change, Sarah," I said, my voice low. And sometimes, the people you trust the most can hurt you the worst. But we'll get through this. We'll figure it out. She looked up at me, tears in her eyes, and nodded. But I could see the pain in her face, the sadness. This wasn't something any of us had asked for, but it was happening. I sat down on the couch, feeling completely drained. The anger had subsided, but now all that was left was the emptiness. The realization that my life, the life I thought I had, was nothing more than an illusion. A carefully constructed lie that Amanda had been spinning for God knows how long. I heard the front door close behind me, and I knew Amanda had followed me out. She didn't say anything at first, but I could feel her presence, hovering just behind me. I didn't turn around. I didn't want to see her. "Daniel," she began, her voice tentative, almost apologetic. "Can we please talk about this?" I didn't look at her. I couldn't. Talk? What is there to talk about, Amanda? You've already made it clear that you don't give a damn about me. About this family. You've been lying to me for months, and now you want to talk. She was silent for a moment. Then, in a tone I hadn't heard from her in years, she said, "I never wanted to hurt you. I never wanted any of this. But I needed something. I was lonely. You weren't here. You were always working, always busy with something else. I needed someone who understood me, who made me feel alive again." Her words stung, each one sharper than the last. She was trying to justify it, to make me feel like I was the one who had failed her, like I was the one who pushed her away. But I wasn't going to buy into it. Not anymore. "You think I wasn't there for you?" I asked, finally turning to face her. "You think I wasn't trying? I gave you everything, Amanda. I gave you my trust, my time, my love. And this is how you repay me? By sleeping with Brad?" Her eyes darted to the floor, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of guilt. But it was too late. The damage was done. The trust was gone. "I don't know what you want from me anymore, Daniel," she said, her voice shaky. "But I never wanted to hurt you. I swear I didn't." I shook my head. "You can't take this back, Amanda. You can't just apologize and expect everything to go back to normal." The silence that followed felt suffocating, like the air had thickened and become impossible to breathe. Amanda stood there, shifting uncomfortably, and I could see her trying to find something, anything, to say that might make the situation better, but she had nothing. Her usual confidence, that facade she had worn so many times, was gone. And in its place was guilt, uncertainty, and something darker I couldn't place. She had no more lies to tell. She had no more excuses. I didn't know what to do with myself. I wanted to shout, to throw something, to tear apart the world around me. I wanted to make her feel what I was feeling. I wanted her to suffer like I was suffering. But in that moment, I realized something. Nothing I did would make it better. The damage had been done, and nothing could undo it. My daughter, Sarah, was still in the room, looking at us both like we were strangers. She had heard everything. She had seen the raw emotion, the betrayal, and the heartbreak. She wasn't a child anymore. She understood what was happening, even if she didn't want to. The look in her eyes, those big, questioning eyes, told me everything I needed to know. She didn't just feel betrayed by Amanda. She felt betrayed by both of us. I could see the cracks forming in her heart, the same cracks that had just opened in mine. I turned to Sarah and tried to force a smile, though I knew it looked weak. "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you go to your room for a while? Just get some rest. We'll figure this out." She didn't say anything. She didn't argue. She just nodded silently and turned to walk away, leaving the room in a heavy silence. As soon as the door closed behind her, I felt my shoulders sag with exhaustion. I didn't know how to fix this. I didn't even know where to begin. I looked at Amanda. She was still standing there, her eyes full of remorse, but the anger in my chest had started to burn hotter. The more I looked at her, the more I saw the woman who had betrayed me, the woman who had lied to my face for months, and I could feel my resolve hardening. "I don't know what you want from me, Amanda," I said, my voice rough, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "I don't know what you expect me to do. Do you think I can just forgive this? Pretend like nothing happened?" "I didn't want it to happen like this, Daniel," she whispered, her voice breaking slightly. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I swear I didn't." I shook my head, my anger rising again. "You didn't mean for it to get this far? Really? You've been sleeping with Brad behind my back. You've been lying to me, sneaking around. And now you're telling me it just got out of hand? Are you kidding me? Her eyes welled up with tears, but I wasn't moved. I couldn't feel sympathy for her. Not now. Not after everything she had done. I was lonely, Daniel. You were always working, and when you were home, you weren't really here. You were distant, cold. I didn't know how to get your attention. Brad, he was there when I needed someone. He listened. He understood me in a way you couldn't. Each word she spoke felt like a knife twisting deeper into my chest. She was still justifying it, still making excuses. Like this was somehow my fault, like I had pushed her into Brad's arms. The thought made me sick. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't anyone's fault but hers. She chose to cheat. She chose to betray me. And now she was trying to make it sound like I had driven her to it. Brad understood you? I repeated, my voice thick with disbelief. What about your vows, Amanda? What about the promises we made to each other? What about the family we built together? She took a step closer, her eyes desperate. Daniel, please. I never meant for it to happen, but it did. And I'm sorry. I really am. I want to fix this. I want us to work through it. Please, don't throw everything away just because of one mistake. One mistake. I almost laughed bitterly. This isn't a mistake, Amanda. This is a choice. You chose this. You chose Brad. And now you want me to just forget it and move on like nothing happened. She stepped forward, reaching out as if she were trying to touch me. But I pulled back instinctively, not wanting to be close to her, not wanting to feel her touch. I love you, Daniel. I still love you. And I swear, I'll do whatever it takes to make things right. Just give me a chance. Love me. I scoffed, the words bitter on my tongue. How can you love me when you've done this? How can you say you love me after what you've done? I don't even know who you are anymore. The words hung in the air between us, sharp and unspoken, and I realized something that I hadn't wanted to admit before. This wasn't just about the affair. It wasn't just about Brad. This was about everything. It was about the trust that had been shattered, the promises that had been broken, and the woman standing in front of me, begging for forgiveness. I didn't know if I could ever trust her again. I took a step back, running my hand through my hair, trying to keep the anger from overwhelming me. I can't do this, Amanda. I can't just pretend like everything's okay. I can't just go back to how things were. Her face crumpled, and for the first time in this whole conversation, I saw a hint of true regret in her eyes. But it was too late. It didn't matter anymore. She had destroyed it. She had destroyed us. I don't know what to say anymore, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Daniel. I'm so sorry. But her apology was hollow. It was empty. It couldn't fix what she had done. I turned my back on her, feeling my heart shatter all over again. I need some space. I need to think. I don't know what comes next. But I can't be around you right now. I walked out of the house, into the cool night air, the weight of the world pressing down on me. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. But one thing was clear. Nothing would ever be the same again. I walked out of the house that night, feeling like a stranger in my own life. The cool night air didn't offer any relief. It didn't matter that the wind was crisp or that the stars above shimmered in the sky. Nothing could erase the weight that pressed down on my chest. It wasn't just the betrayal that cut through me. It was everything. The lies, the broken promises, the family I thought I knew. How had it all come to this? I walked for hours, not really knowing where I was going, only knowing that I couldn't stay inside that house, inside that life, even for one more minute. The streets felt endless, and the city, once so familiar, now seemed foreign to me. Every corner I turned, every house I passed, felt like it belonged to someone else. The life I had built with Amanda was slipping away, and I didn't know how to stop it. I finally found myself at a bar, sitting alone in a dim corner with a drink in front of me. The bartender didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. People came here to forget, to bury their thoughts in alcohol, and I was no different. I could still see Amanda's face in my mind, her tears, her desperation. But no matter how much I tried to block it out, there was one question that kept haunting me. How could she have done this? How could she betray everything we had built for years with just a moment's pleasure with Brad? I took a long sip of my drink, trying to drown the thoughts. But they came back just as quickly. How long had this been going on? How many nights had she stayed late, pretending to work, when all along she was with him? I wondered if she had ever really loved me. Maybe it was always just a game to her. Maybe I had been the one who was naive enough to believe in the fairy tale. Hey, you okay? The voice broke through my thoughts, and I looked up to see a man standing beside me. He was middle-aged, dressed in a suit that looked like it had seen better days. But his eyes were kind, understanding even. I nodded, offering a small smile that I didn't feel. Yeah, just thinking. Sometimes, thinking too much doesn't help, he said with a small chuckle. You mind if I join you? I waved him in, grateful for the distraction, even if it was just temporary. The man sat down, ordering his own drink, and for a few moments, there was silence between us. But it wasn't uncomfortable. There was something about being with someone who didn't know anything about you, who wasn't looking at you with pity or judgment, that made it easier to breathe. You ever been betrayed, man? He asked suddenly, breaking the silence. I froze, my hand stilling around my glass. What do you mean? Cheated on, he clarified. You know, someone you trust, someone you love, doing something behind your back. I looked at him for a moment, unsure if I wanted to open up to a complete stranger. But the weight in my chest was unbearable. I couldn't keep it all inside anymore. Yeah, I finally said, my voice quieter than I intended. I just found out my wife's been seeing another guy for months. A guy I thought I could trust. A friend. And now everything's falling apart. The man looked at me for a long moment, his face unreadable. That's rough, he said, his tone surprisingly gentle. It's like a betrayal of everything you thought was real, right? I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Here's the thing, he continued, his voice low but firm. You can't control what she's done. You can't change what's already happened. But you can control what happens next. You can decide what kind of man you're going to be, what kind of life you're going to live. I looked at him, confused. What do you mean? I mean, don't let this define you, he said, his eyes meeting mine. Don't let her mistake destroy you. You can walk away from this. You don't need to stay in the pain. You don't need to stay with someone who doesn't value you. His words hit me like a ton of bricks. I had been so focused on the anger, the betrayal, the hurt, that I hadn't stopped to think about what I actually wanted. What was I going to do now? Was I going to stay with someone who had broken me? Or was I going to walk away and rebuild my life? Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever trust her again? How do you know all this? I asked, still unsure if I was even processing what he was saying. He shrugged, taking a sip of his drink. Been there myself. A long time ago. Learned the hard way. Trust me when I say, you're worth more than that. You deserve someone who chooses you, who doesn't lie, who doesn't betray you. I took a deep breath, letting his words settle in my mind. For the first time since I found out about Amanda's affair, I felt like I was seeing the situation through a different lens. Maybe I didn't have to stay in the pain. Maybe it was time for me to move on, to take control of my own life again. The man and I talked for a while longer. He didn't give me any answers, didn't tell me what to do. But he gave me something more important, a sense of clarity. He reminded me that I had a choice. And right now, I was starting to realize that my choice was to leave the past behind and move forward, no matter how hard it was. As the night wore on and the bar began to empty, I stood up, ready to leave. Thanks for the talk, I said, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. The man gave me a small nod, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. Anytime, man. Good luck. I walked out of the bar, the cool air biting at my skin. But this time, it wasn't suffocating. This time, I could breathe. As I made my way home, the weight on my chest felt a little lighter. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I had a say in it. When I walked back into the house that night, the first thing that hit me was the silence. It was oppressive, like the walls themselves were holding their breath, waiting for something to break. The house was too quiet, too empty. The laughter and warmth I remembered from the early days of our marriage seemed like a distant memory. Now, it felt like I was walking through a stranger's home, an echo of what once was. Amanda was sitting on the couch when I entered, her face pale, her eyes red from crying. She had been waiting for me, hoping I would come back, hoping that I would somehow forgive her. But she had no idea what I had been through, no idea that things had changed forever in my mind. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood in the doorway, watching her. I couldn't bring myself to speak. The words were stuck in my throat, tangled with so much anger, so much hurt, that I couldn't find the right way to say them. Instead, I just walked past her, heading toward the kitchen, needing a moment to gather myself. She didn't move, didn't try to stop me. I could hear her breathing behind me, but I didn't turn around. There was nothing left to say. We had said it all. She had betrayed me. She had lied to me over and over again, and now there was nothing left. My trust in her was gone, shattered into a million pieces that I knew would never fit back together. I stood in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, my mind racing. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to pack my things and leave that night, just walk out and never look back. But another part of me, some part that was still holding on to the man I had been before this betrayal, wanted to stay, to try and fix things. Maybe it was because of the years we had spent together, or maybe it was because of Sarah, but I didn't know how to let go. It was then that Amanda spoke, her voice breaking the silence that had settled between us. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. Please, please don't leave. I know what I've done, and I'm so ashamed of myself. But I love you. I need you. Please don't walk away." I felt the words sink into me, but they didn't have the effect they should have. They didn't stir the same feelings I had once had for her. Instead, they just felt hollow, like a script she was reading from, a series of words she thought would fix everything but couldn't. She had used those same words before, and each time, they had been a lie wrapped in a sweet-sounding apology. I closed my eyes, trying to steady my breathing. I had made my decision, but it wasn't going to be easy. The road ahead was going to be painful, but it was the only way I could see myself moving forward. I turned to face her, my voice calm but resolute. "Amanda, I can't keep doing this. I can't keep pretending that everything's okay when it's not. You've broken my trust. You've shattered everything we built, and I can't just ignore that. You can apologize 1,000 times, but it won't change what you did. It won't change what you've taken from me." Her face crumpled, tears filling her eyes again. "I know," she whispered. "I know, and I'm so sorry. I wish I could take it back, but I can't. All I can do now is beg for your forgiveness. Please, please don't leave me." I shook my head, the weight of her words almost suffocating me. "Forgiveness. I don't know if I can forgive you, Amanda. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. The way you betrayed me, it's not something that can just be fixed with an apology. I don't know what's next for us, but I know I can't keep living like this. I can't keep pretending that everything's fine when I'm broken inside." She stood up then, moving toward me, but I held up my hand, stopping her. "I need space. I need time to figure this out. But right now, I need to be away from you. I can't stay in this house with you after everything that's happened." Her eyes widened in shock, as if she hadn't expected that kind of response. You're leaving me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'm doing yet," I said, my voice strained. "But I can't stay here right now. I can't look at you and pretend that nothing's wrong. I need time. I need to think." She stood there, frozen, as if she didn't know how to react. But there was nothing left to say. The words had been spoken. The truth had been laid bare, and now it was time for both of us to face the consequences. I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair and walked toward the door. But before I stepped outside, I turned to her one last time. "I don't know what will happen after this, Amanda. I don't know if we'll ever be able to fix this. But right now, I need to be on my own. I need to figure out who I am without you." With that, I stepped outside into the cool night air. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and the sound of my footsteps echoed in the silence. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I couldn't keep living in a house filled with lies and betrayal. I needed to find myself again, even if it meant starting over from scratch. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing. I had made the right decision for me. I had to take control of my life again, no matter how hard it was. The night was colder than I expected, and as I walked through the streets, I felt the full weight of my decision pressing down on me. The city around me buzzed with life. Cars honked, people laughed in passing, and the lights from the buildings flickered like a million little stars. But to me, everything felt distant, muted. I was no longer part of it. I felt like an outsider in my own life, a stranger looking in at everything I had once known. I found myself standing at the edge of a park, staring into the darkness. I didn't know how long I'd been walking, but I couldn't go back. Not yet. Not until I could think clearly, until I could figure out what I was going to do. The reality of the situation still hadn't fully sunk in. It felt like a bad dream, one I couldn't wake up from. The woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with everything, had betrayed me in the worst way possible. How long had I been blind to it? How many times had she smiled at me, told me she loved me, all while carrying on this affair? Brad, the name alone made my blood boil. I had known him. I had trusted him. How could he do this to me, too? And Amanda, how could she throw everything away for something so fleeting, so selfish? Didn't our years together mean anything to her? I kicked a rock that lay on the sidewalk, watching as it skidded away into the grass. My mind was a mess of questions, none of which I had answers to. I had been in that house for years. Years with Amanda, with Sarah, and now it felt like I was living in a house of cards that had come crashing down around me. My life had changed in a single moment, and nothing would ever be the same again. I was about to sit down on a nearby bench when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw that it was a message from Sarah. "Dad, please come home. Mom is freaking out. I don't know what to do." My heart dropped into my stomach. I had forgotten about Sarah and all of this. I had been so wrapped up in my own pain, my own anger, that I had momentarily lost sight of what was most important. She was the one who needed me now, not Amanda. Amanda had made her choice. But Sarah, she was innocent. She didn't ask for any of this. She didn't deserve to see her family fall apart like this. I sighed and rubbed my face, feeling the weight of everything crash down on me. I couldn't stay away. I had to go back. For her. I tapped out a quick reply to Sarah. "I'm on my way. Stay in your room. Everything's going to be okay." The moment I hit send, I felt a strange sense of relief. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time in hours, I felt like I had a sense of control. I wasn't just drifting through the chaos. I was going to make sure Sarah was okay. That was my priority now. I could deal with Amanda later, when I was stronger. The walk back felt longer than the first. My legs ached, but my mind was too busy to notice. When I finally arrived home, I stood outside for a moment, just listening. It was quiet. Too quiet. No sounds of laughter, no sounds of life. Just silence. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I opened the door and stepped inside. The house felt colder than it had earlier, like the warmth had been sucked out of it. I didn't want to look at Amanda. I didn't want to face her. I needed to focus on Sarah first. I found her sitting on the stairs, her arms wrapped around her knees, looking small and lost. She looked up when she heard me approach, and in her eyes, I saw the pain I had been trying to shield her from. The hurt I had been so focused on was now reflected in her face. She was just a kid, for God's sake. She shouldn't have to be going through this. I sat down beside her, pulling her into my arms without saying a word. She leaned into me, her body shaking with silent sobs. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to make this better. But I held her, my heart breaking as I whispered, "It's going to be okay, sweetheart. We'll figure this out. I promise." We sat there in silence for a long time, with only the sound of her soft crying filling the air. I wanted to tell her everything was going to be fine, but I couldn't lie to her. It wasn't going to be fine. Not right away. But we would get through it, one step at a time. I'll make sure of that. After a while, I stood up, gently pulling her to her feet. "Come on, let's go upstairs. You need some rest." Sarah nodded quietly, and we made our way to her room. She climbed into bed, still clinging to me like a lifeline. I stayed there for a while, sitting at the edge of her bed, making sure she felt safe. It wasn't much, but it was all I could offer in that moment. I kissed her forehead and stood up to leave. "I'll be in the living room if you need me. Just call me, okay?" She nodded again, and I turned to leave the room. As I walked down the hallway, I found myself standing in front of the door to the living room. Amanda was still there, sitting on the couch, her head in her hands. She looked up when she heard me enter, her face streaked with tears. But I couldn't bring myself to feel sorry for her. Not anymore. "I've taken care of Sarah," I said, my voice cold. "She's in bed now, but I need you to understand that this isn't just going to blow over. This isn't something we can fix overnight." Amanda opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand. No, Amanda, you've had your say, and I've heard enough. What we do now is up to me, and I'm still deciding what comes next. But right now, I need space. From you. From everything. She nodded, her shoulders slumping in defeat. I understand. The night dragged on longer than it should have. The house felt like a mausoleum, hollow and silent, the only sounds being the distant hum of the refrigerator and the faint rustle of papers on the kitchen counter. Amanda didn't say anything more. She didn't try to speak to me after I'd told her that I needed space. She simply sat there, alone, while I made my way into the living room to sit on the couch. There was so much I wanted to say, so many emotions I needed to express, but it felt impossible to put them into words. How do you tell the person you've loved for years that everything you believed in is a lie? How do you make them understand that you can't just flip a switch and pretend that nothing happened? Amanda had broken me, and there was no simple path forward. No quick fix. I leaned back against the couch, staring at the ceiling, lost in my thoughts. The questions wouldn't stop coming, each one sharper than the last. Why did you do this, Amanda? What was wrong with us? How could you look me in the eye and lie for so long? I felt like I was drowning in a sea of doubt and pain, unable to find the surface. The weight of everything was suffocating me. And all the while, I kept thinking about Sarah. She didn't deserve this. No child should have to watch their parents fall apart like this. I wanted to protect her, to shield her from the ugly truths of the world, but all I could do was sit in silence and hope that somehow she would be okay. I pulled my phone from my pocket and scrolled through my contacts, eventually landing on my brother's name. James had always been the one I turned to when things got tough. He knew me better than anyone else, and even though we didn't talk as often as we should, I knew he would understand. He had been through his own fair share of relationship struggles, and if anyone could help me make sense of this mess, it was him. I typed out a quick message. I need to talk. Can you come over? A few minutes later, my phone buzzed with his response. On my way. I sighed with a small sense of relief. At least I wouldn't be alone tonight. By the time James arrived, the house had grown even quieter, if that was possible. The air felt thick with tension. I had no idea how I was going to tell him everything, how I was going to explain the chaos that had consumed my life in the last 48 hours. But I knew he would listen. He always did. He knocked on the door, and I got up to let him in. He was standing there with his usual easy smile, but when he saw the expression on my face, it quickly faded. You okay, man? He asked, his tone immediately shifting from lighthearted to concerned. I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I motioned for him to sit down on the couch. He did, his face serious now, waiting for me to speak. I took a deep breath, running my hands through my hair. It's bad, James. It's really bad. I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I even want it anymore. James looked at me, his eyes understanding but guarded. What happened? He asked quietly. And with that, I started talking. I told him everything about the affair, about the photos Sarah had found, about the fight I had with Amanda earlier that evening. I told him about the way Amanda had tried to justify it, how she had deflected blame, and how, despite everything, I was still unsure of what to do. I told him about Sarah and how I felt like I had failed her as a father. James listened, nodding every now and then, but never interrupting. When I finished, I sat back, waiting for his response. I didn't know what I was expecting, but I needed something, some kind of advice, something to help me move forward. After a long pause, James leaned forward, his eyes serious. Look, man, this is rough. There's no denying that. But I think you're looking at this the wrong way. You're not the one who needs fixing here. It's Amanda. I shook my head. I know that, but it's not that simple. I still love her, James. Or at least I thought I did. I don't even know anymore. I've given her everything. And now I'm not sure who she is. James took a deep breath and leaned back, running his hands over his face. I get it, man. I really do. You're hurt. You're angry. But you've got to stop blaming yourself for this. This is Amanda's mess. She's the one who crossed the line. She's the one who betrayed you. And no matter what she says, no matter how many times she apologizes, you can't just forget that. I know, I'm muttered. But so hard, James. It's not just about the affair. It's everything. Her lying, the trust we built together, the years we spent building this family. It feels like it was all a lie. It wasn't all a lie, he said firmly. You didn't do anything wrong, Daniel. You didn't deserve this. You've been a good husband and a good father. This is on Amanda. She's the one who made those choices, not you. His words stung in a way I didn't expect. She's the one who made those choices. Every time I said it to myself, it felt like I was learning to breathe again. It was her betrayal, her decisions, and I didn't have to carry that weight alone. I had to focus on what I could control, how I responded to all of this, how I moved forward. What do I do now, James? I asked, my voice breaking. How do I move on from this? How do I stop feeling like everything we had was a lie? James was quiet for a long time, as if considering the best way to respond. Finally, he spoke. You start with yourself. You figure out what's best for you, what's best for Sarah. You can't control Amanda or her choices, but you can control your own. And as for moving on, it's going to take time. A lot of time, but you'll get through this. You're stronger than you think. I nodded slowly, grateful for his support, but still feeling like there was so much left to figure out. What did the future look like now? Was there a way back for Amanda and me? Could I ever trust her again? James stood up, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm here for you, man. Whatever you need. You're not alone in this. As he left, I felt a small sense of hope. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time since the whole mess started, I felt like I might have a chance to rebuild my life, to take the pieces of what was left and move forward. But as I sat in the silence of the house, my thoughts inevitably turned to Amanda. Could I ever forgive her? Could I ever rebuild the trust we once had? The questions lingered in the air, unanswered.